biggest hurdle, I would say just finding profitable accounts, because I would find a lot of distributors and I would, source their sales sheets, and it's just barely making any money, or Amazon's on most of the listings. So just being able to find certain items that worked for me, fit my criteria, and making sure that Amazon wasn't on the listing, because as you know, they'll drive down the price just to keep that buy box.
Hello and welcome to the Wholesale Made Easy podcast, where we believe selling on Amazon shouldn't be hard, and we're going to prove it. My name is Dylan Carter, and I'm one of the co-founders at Vendrive, a tool that helps Amazon wholesale sellers streamline their businesses, stay organized, and land more profitable accounts. I'm sitting down with other successful wholesale sellers, and together we're sharing lessons learned and what it really takes to succeed with wholesale. Awesome, Brandon. So thank you for taking some time to sit down with me, man.
No problem. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So the reason why we had you on today is you posted in the Facebook group some progress screenshots of your sales with wholesale on Amazon. I think that was November 1st. And it kind of sparked some positivity in the group and in a little chain of comments, which was awesome. But I wanted to reach out and break down where you started, how you got to where you are now, and a few of the hurdles you had to overcome. And we were talking right before I pressed record about finding balance between working full time and doing this. And I know that's a big issue for a lot of people. It's a common question I get is, Dylan, how do I reach out to enough suppliers to get profitable accounts?
Right.
But do that with a full-time job or a family. So how did you find doing that?
Well, I got involved in Amazon back in 2016. I have a good friend of mine who sells full time. He does online arbitrage full time, and he needed an extra buyer. So that's how I got involved with the whole idea of Amazon. So I started buying for him, and I started dabbling, started selling on my own in 2016. And then just things started taking off, and I enjoy online arbitrage, but at the same time, it can be frustrating because you're always sourcing for new products and, 3 items here, 5 here. So I wanted something new and, found Wholesale and ended up finding your Facebook page. And I think I was, one of the first few to like your page, and I've been following you since the beginning.
Yeah, I think you were like one of the first 20 in our group, like way back in the day.
So in 2018, I remember in January, I wanted to focus on Wholesale and started landing accounts. So I was fully focused. I started your method of reverse sourcing. And then I started finding a category with, some niches. And from there, I started reaching out to brands and distributors. And now at this point, I've maxed out most of my capital. And like you said, once you get started, it's challenging. But once you get to that point, you can be more selective. And capital is your biggest issue. So that's where I'm at right now, because I can keep buying stuff, but I want to be more selective and I want to find more profitable items. But in terms of the balance, it can be challenging. I know for me, I work full time in DC. My commute is awful. It's about 10 to 15 hours per week. And I also do, I have another business. So I'm an in-home personal trainer. So I'm trading time for dollars there. So an hour of my time I'm giving to my clients.
And I know that struggle. I used to be a personal trainer, and that's for every hour you're actively training a client, there's like 2 on the back end.
Yeah. And
so
the money is
a lot.
And the money is great. It's the commute too, because you don't really factor that in. But, for me, it's about consistency. Like every day when I get home, I'll maybe work for an hour on Amazon, maybe reconciling shipments, just following up with emails that I didn't get to during the day, creating cases for items that were, damaged. So just doing that day in and day out rather than just waiting till it piles up on like a Saturday or Sunday, because it can be overwhelming.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of people get to a point of frustration where they almost want to quit and say this doesn't work, is they go in such large swings of, I'm going to go really, really hard for like 2 days and then nothing for like 2 weeks, and then say, okay, well, I didn't get any accounts, so clearly this doesn't work. But that's not really the program. That's not really the process that we see work. And what you have to do is consistency per day. And if you have only 30 minutes, that's great. Do that 30 minutes per day. You also alluded to something I like to talk about a lot because I find it's a common pattern with a lot of sellers, and I call it the shift. So every wholesale Amazon seller, when they get started, is in phase one, and there's going to be two phases. So that first phase is you've got some or a lot of capital, but not enough inventory to purchase, right? That's the common issue.
Right.
But if you focus long enough on how to get profitable accounts consistently every single week, and you get really good at that, it shifts. And then it becomes, okay, I have so much profitable inventory I could buy, but I only have so much capital. And then it's, okay, well, now I need to go raise money, get more capital. Now I need to be more selective. Like you said, maybe I'm going to turn away the 50% ROI product in lieu of the 80% ROI product. So now you're giving up profitable inventory for more profitable inventory.
Exactly. And I have taken a few of the Amazon lending loans, but I made sure to pay it off within that month because at the time I needed the capital quick. But I mean, once I started selling the items, I could just quickly pay it off. So I would only take those out of like dire necessity, but I have done it. And each time I pay it off, it's funny. They always come back with like a higher number.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like they build confidence in you because like, oh, wait, he paid that back in like 2 weeks. So clearly he knows what he's doing. So that leads me to another question, which is how high is your churn rate? So are you ordering 30 days worth of inventory, a week, 2 weeks? What are you doing?
As I become more involved with wholesale, I'm going more 30 to 60 days. But I did just make my largest purchase because it was an all or nothing deal, and it was kind of risky, but the rank was amazing, and the ROI was right around 50%. So it's probably about 4 or 5 months worth of items. Yeah, it's a little scary dropping, $15,000-$20,000, but the reward outweighs the risk, in my opinion.
It's a cool place to get to when you have a single order come through and it's over 10 grand. Like that first one, you'll always remember it because it's such a dumbfounding thing. Because you stop and you're like, wait, I used to struggle to spend like $500 on a single order, and I just did this on one SKU for like 30 days worth of inventory, whatever the length is.
It's funny telling people that too. They're like, you dropped how much money? You're like, I know.
Yeah. But in comparison to what you're doing overall, that's not everything. So perception matters, right? It's, if you said, okay, I had $10,000-$15,000 and that's it, and I just threw it all onto one SKU, I'm gambling. Okay, that's a different conversation. But you've been doing this long enough. You've done your research on the product. The rank's good. I'm assuming you looked at the historical on that, and I know you did.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's more of a calculated risk. And it's not risk in the traditional gambling sense. It's risk in terms of the amount of opportunity and reward you have available for a relatively small amount of risk is pretty good.
Right. And I got a letter authorizing I could sell this brand. There's only maybe 1 or 2 other sellers on the listing. So I know it'll sell out, but just that initial, paying that up front is just a lot. But over time, I know that feeling will fade. And, if I'm dropping 40 or 50,000, that'll be the new scary moment.
Yeah. And that's the cool thing about being an entrepreneur is, and I'm not sure the correct term for it, but you adjust as you grow. So like I said, when you're getting started, dropping $500 on an order, you're like, whoa, that's a lot of money. And then you grow and you're like, wait, I'm spending $30,000 a month on inventory. And then you're like, okay, that's a lot of money. And then you meet somebody and they're like, yeah, no, I spend $200 a month on inventory. You're like, okay, I'm doing nothing then. So it's all perception, and there's no, right or wrong level of sales. It's really about what you want. But it is dumbfounding when you're able to get to that point. And a lot of people struggle to get to that one part. And like, for me, it's a tipping point. Once you get there, everything else seems to just align and everything's easier. When you have products that do 50% plus, that opens up doors to running PPC ads, which are super cheap on Amazon. So that 4 to 5 months worth of inventory, maybe you start running PPC to it profitably. Maybe you can sell it in 2 months.
Exactly. And once I read your article about PPC, I think it was about a month ago, I started doing with a brand that I'm working with, well, not exclusively, but I'm one of the few sellers. And I've seen a spike in sales. My ACOS is right around 5%. So it's really kind of helped
great.
grow that brand. And they've been sending me products. I work with the brand directly, and they're seeing how much their product is selling, and I'm buying from them. So they've been sending me some of their not so well ranked items as samples. So they're like, here, Brandon, try selling these, get back to us and letting us know how they sold. So they're trying to use me to help push their product, which is great for both of us. It's a win-win.
Yeah. And that's what I talked about in the 5 strategies to get wholesale suppliers to approve you is shift to the power position. Now you are in the power position. Now they're saying, how can we get Brandon to move more of our inventory? Like, they're giving you the opportunity to make that happen. And they're not saying, hey, we'll let you buy more. It's, hey, take this, see what you can do. And if you can make it work, we'll make it work on our end. Now you're structuring deals more so than an e-commerce transaction. A lot of sellers, when they get started, that's the way they view the transaction with a B2B supplier, is no different than ordering something on Amazon.com. It's not an e-commerce transaction. It's a business-to-business transaction, and that's a deal. And that means there's flexibility there. So you mentioned with this current supplier, it's direct with the brand. Are you predominantly direct with brands, or do you go more distributors?
I probably only work with 2 to 3 brands directly, but I've had a lot of luck with distributors. So I have probably about 3 to 4 distributors that I work with. And I mean, I haven't even scratched the surface with the products that I could buy from them, just because for me now I do not have enough of it. So it's just, I know 2019, I need to start outsourcing a lot of my work so I have more time to focus on other parts of the business.
Yeah, we need to get you a little team of VAs and some automation going. As you're talking, I'm like, there's so many things we could automate in your business. It would be great.
I know. I'm very simple. Even my accounting, I still do it with a Excel spreadsheet, but I've been looking, actually yesterday I was looking at automating it, because it's just 1,000 transactions a month. Like,
yep.
Just getting out of hand.
Yeah, and it does. And that's when you realize as a business owner, you're spending 10, 20% of your time on administrative tasks that really should take 5% of your time.
And even prepping, I love doing some of the prep work, but I've outsourced probably 80% of it. So I have 2 prep centers that I work with now.
So what went into your decision when you went the prep center versus prepping yourself, kind of warehouse route? Just
the amount of stuff that has been in my garage. I'm at the point now I've outgrown my garage. So then I knew I just had to outsource that, because I'm getting pallets of stuff delivered. Well, I've had pallets delivered to my house, but I couldn't keep having huge pallets delivered to my house. So I knew using a prep center would help. And I mean, they have the proper team to help, make my life easier. Yeah, they're so plug and play. It's kind of cool when I tell people I've never touched my wholesale inventory, like ever. And it's awesome. But at a certain point, and I've learned this as I grew, it does financially and economically make sense to bring the prepping kind of in-house, because you can take let's say you're paying 50 cents to 75 cents per unit. You can bring that cost down to 15, 20, maybe 30 cents per unit. But once you get to that level, it makes sense. But starting out, I think it's great, because there's a lot of things you don't have to worry about. You don't have to worry about shipping logistics. You don't have to worry about being there, especially if you're working full time. Because a lot of suppliers, if they deliver, they might just set it on your front door if it's just a few packages. And that's potentially, I don't know, $1,000 to $5,000 worth of inventory sitting on your front doorstep until you get home. Yeah, it can be overwhelming. I have one of those Ring doorbells, so some days I'll check in and just see piles of boxes, and I'm just stressing over that. Yeah.
And it is a little stressful. And so for me, mitigating any kind of risk or stress is kind of paramount to everything. I'm like, okay, how do I just not deal with this for right now? And then once I get good at it, then I'll take it over. The cool thing about prep centers, they have to be experts when it comes to prepping and shipping into Amazon. There's a lot of things I just didn't know as a seller when I got started that they're teaching me. Because I'm like, hey, why did you break up a box? They're like, oh, it was 61 pounds. I'm like, okay, what does that matter? They're like, well, you can't ship in a carton over 50 pounds. I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. So
Oh yeah.
kind of outsourcing to experts, to me, is worth the cost until you get to a point where it more financially makes sense to bring it in-house as you grow. So I was just looking at the picture you posted. So you're at, let's see, 68,000 on the year in sales.
Or that was no, or that was October.
Oh, that was October. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was right going into Q4. So
Q4, yeah.
what are you at now?
Year to date, I haven't looked. I'd say right around 350 to 400,000 for the year.
Really? That is way different.
I know. Because last year I ended 2017 the 190,000, so I've almost doubled that.
That's incredible. That's huge.
I know.
I could see you, like, I could hear you just take a second and be like, whoa, and really take it in. That's amazing. So you started in 2016 with Wholesale, right?
I started with online arbitrage in 2016.
Okay. What year did you start with Wholesale exclusively? Like, you fully focused on it?
So I still do a little bit of online arbitrage, but I would say I'm like right around 70 to 80% wholesale, just because my capital is being more tied up with the larger purchases with Wholesale. But in 2018, in January, I started in Wholesale. So that's when I started just grinding, just started the reverse sourcing and just calling suppliers, calling distributors.
That's incredible. Did you find that hard when you first started calling suppliers? Because I know, including myself, it's such a weird thing to do and it feels so uncomfortable. And you start running through these what ifs of, what if they ask me this? What if they ask me that? And I don't have an answer. And you realize none of that matters. And it's just a regular conversation. But how did you find that process going from starting in January basically to where you are now?
The first few conversations were kind of challenging. And then after a while, you kind of see a pattern of the questions that they ask. And then you eventually learn how to respond and, keep them on the phone longer, and then just having a conversation, like you said, so just talking them to like a normal person. And then after a while, you develop a relationship, just checking in and, asking how their day is, just little stuff that, rather than just treating it as the straight transaction, treat them as a human being.
Yeah. And that's really the secret, right? I mean, as simple as it sounds, a lot of people just don't do that. They don't understand, not that they don't understand, but their preconceived notion of how that should be far outweighs the realities of it. And the realities of calling suppliers is it's no different than calling somebody you already know. It's a simple conversation. And to your point, there is a pattern. They all have, on average, the same concerns as every other wholesale seller or supplier. And so when you realize these patterns, you're like, yeah, you're going to ask me the same like four to five questions. And I already have those ready to go. And even better, I'm probably just going to go ahead and answer those before they ask them. And then they know I've done this for a while, regardless of however long I've actually done this. It could be 3-4 months, whatever. But I'm showing, again, shifting to that power position. I know what I'm talking about. I understand how this works, not just from my perspective, but from your perspective. And I'm thinking this whole time about you as a wholesale supplier, not just what I want, but like, how do I make this work for both of us? And you said that earlier, is the relationship you currently have with the supplier that's sending you some samples that you can start testing is it works not just for you, but for them also. Because if it doesn't work for them, then why do they need you?
Exactly. And I emailed her this morning because I saw one or two of the ASINs are under map, and I'd like to just give them a heads up of what's going on. Not to tattle on that person, but I mean, not to devalue their product. because they want to stay above that number, and you have to help them, get to that point.
Yeah, a lot of sellers feel, and I've just because I've had these conversations, like, well, am I kind of tattling on other sellers? I'm like, you're not tattling. There's a MAP agreement enforced. And the reason for that is it devalues a brand or the product specifically. So yeah, you should bring that up, because that directly hurts the dollars coming back into your business and your pockets. So yeah, I'm going to let a supplier know, hey, these two sellers continuously go under MAP. They need to be gone, because apparently they can't follow simple directions and adhere to an agreement that they personally signed on for. So no, you should get off the listing. I mean, I don't know how else to say it, but this is business, and there's a professional way of approaching this. And this goes way back to what I said, when we first started the Facebook group, is you can either be an Amazon quote unquote seller or a business owner. There's two different ways to approach this business model. You can be, the quintessential flipper, and I'm just going to do whatever I got to do to make money, or you can build a real company. And when you approach it being a real company, you selling on Amazon isn't as big of a deal as you're a flipper who also sells on Amazon. There's two different perceptions there from a supplier standpoint.
Exactly. And also, as just a small note, you cannot reach out to say if another seller is under MAP, you cannot reach out to them directly and say, hey, you are under MAP pricing. There was I think his name was Mark in our group. He did that once, and he got temporarily suspended because it's against Amazon's terms of service.
Yeah.
So it's better just to go through the brand, and then they can deal with it.
Back in the day, it was more lenient. You could get away sending those. They still never worked. And I get them. I have people reach out that say that they're the actual supplier, even though they're clearly not. And they threaten me, get off the listing, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no. I know how these tricks work. I'm sorry. But yeah, so if you're dealing with MAP issues, you go directly to the brand or the account holder for the MAP policy, and you let them deal with it. You let them call Amazon, or better yet, call the seller directly and say, listen, if you don't change this, you're not restocking, period. Because having Amazon get involved to kick them off the listing is kind of too much, in my opinion, and it's going to take too long. But having a supplier say you're not buying this anymore, that goes to the root.
Exactly.
Now, regardless of if they can sell or not, they can't buy the inventory, so it's irrelevant.
Although it can be challenging for a brand to get rid of all sellers. I had there was a brand that I was buying through a distributor, and they sent all sellers on their various listings a cease and desist through Voorhees. I'm sure you've heard of that.
Yeah.
They call them, they're the ambulance chasers. So I've been told. So I occasionally look, because I stopped selling. I sold out of the inventory, and I occasionally look, and there's still 10 to 12 sellers on the listing. So I'm just not sure, I guess, if I should keep selling that brand, but it's better to stay away.
It's still that gray area. So we're not necessarily still in the wild, wild west of the early days of wholesale where anything went. Like buying knockoffs from China was technically considered wholesale. And we still hear people like, oh, yeah, I do wholesale. I buy directly from manufacturers in China. It's like, that's not the same thing. It's called a counterfeit. But we're still finding a balance with how suppliers are approaching selling on Amazon and to third-party sellers. But it has stabilized. It has calmed down a lot. And that makes it harder for a lot of people. 2-3 years ago, it was much easier to do this profitably. Now it's easy, but it takes a lot of work. It's a lot harder. And that's a good thing, in my opinion, because with a low barrier to entry, I mean, we have, almost 3,600 people in our Facebook group right now.
Wow.
So, yeah. And that's over the course of like 10 months. So the amount of people who can get started is super high. But the drop-off rate is also super high. So the people that stick through, and I'm sure you've seen it in the Facebook group as well, there's a set amount of people who have been here for so long who actively put in the work and overcome these hurdles or find solutions to problems that they're dealing with. And then they end up in a position like you're in now, where you're like, yeah, it's been a year and I'm doing, $300,000-$400,000 in sales. There's a big difference in how you're approaching it versus somebody who is going to jump in, say, I'm going to kill it, I'm going to hustle, hashtag grind. And then 3 months later, they're nowhere to be found and they're on to the next thing. And again, that goes back to being a flipper versus building a real business.
I mean, on the surface, it looks easy, but I mean, there's so many little things when you sell on Amazon that can be so frustrating. So that's why that first year of when you first sign up, a lot of people, I don't know what the fall off rate is. It's probably, I think I read like 80 to 90%.
Yeah, it's around there. Being conservative.
Because I know for me, starting was tough. I couldn't sell a lot of brands, but over time, Amazon kind of vets you. They see your revenue numbers are growing. You have great feedback. So, I mean, after like a year and a half, I was able to sell all big brands like Apple, Sony.
Yep.
So I became ungated one day, and it's really incredible. So it is possible to still become ungated in those brands. It just takes time.
Yeah, your account has to become seasoned. So Amazon doesn't know Brandon. They know Brandon's account. They know the variables attached to your account, more importantly. So after a certain amount of time, and a lot of wholesale sellers that grow to where you're at start to experience this, you start to test it. You go, okay, well, I'm going to try and list this and see if it's gated. And it is. You go, okay, I'm just going to click request, and you do it. And when you see it's taking a little bit longer to load, you're like, I just got approved. And then it comes back and you got auto ungated because your account's in good standing, and it has been for a year plus. So as your account becomes seasoned, you have low defect rates, great reviews, a decent amount of sales, especially over the 6 figures in sales. Amazon's like, yeah, we'll give you some leeway. It's all good. And then it's, again, less work for you. So the longer you do it, really the easier it becomes, not just on the supplier front, but on the actual Amazon front.
Exactly. And your account has value. I know of certain sellers that have sold their account for thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
They're fully ungated, great reviews. So people will pay top dollar for that.
Yeah. I have people reach out to me asking if I know anybody selling them because they're like, yeah, I want a 5th account. Here's specifically what I'm looking for. It has to be ungated in this. Let me know. Here's what I'm willing to pay. And it's thousands of dollars. I mean,
and it's funny. When I was in college, I would sell my used textbooks on Amazon. So I've actually had a seller account for so many years. So I can do daily payouts, which I know a lot of people cannot do now.
Really? So you got grandfather. That's awesome.
Yeah, because I know now you have to pay. There's a payability, so you have to pay. They take a small cut of your revenue. Yeah,
payability is kind of your only option if you don't have daily payouts directly through Amazon. So I remember when I got started, I was dabbling with RAOA, and I didn't have the pro account. I was like, I'm just going to play around with it. And then I started selling stuff. I'm like, great, I want to go, respin this capital and churn it again. And I'm like, why is my payout like a month away? And then somebody in a forum, because this is like my first month of just Amazon selling period, was like, yeah, dude, you need a pro account. You're not going to get your money. So I immediately was like, yeah, here's $40. Don't worry about it. Give me my $500 back, please. And it is funny. That brings up a point where a lot of newer sellers, and I understand it because it's new, it's slightly scary. A lot of new sellers are so afraid of taking on any monthly expenses, even though that could be the catalyst for you increasing your trajectory with your sales. It's crazy. So as a good example, using like Restock Pro for wholesale, I put that off for the longest time, but the moment I turned on that as a system, it saved me 5 hours a week, immediately paid for itself, and it just made my life better, right? So I had less work to do and more sales. I'm like, why did I wait so long? And I think it's like $70 a month. It's not expensive.
I have to look into it. I know of it. It's one of those things where you're so used to stuck in your own ways. So it's hard to, get out of that routine and try something new, but it'll better your life.
Yeah. And what got you to six figures? So your first 100,000 in annual sales, that system and process is a bit different than going from 100,000 to 500,000, from 500,000 to 1 million, because it's sheer volume that you have to be able to process that much data, and to be able to do that efficiently with a small team and staying lean and keeping expenses down, you have to utilize those kind of systems and processes and those tools that allow you to do that. That's basically why we built Vendrive, because we're reaching out to hundreds of suppliers a week. I'm like, yeah, I can't keep up with all these spreadsheets. I'm losing, profitable price sheets in my email that I find 2 months later. And I'm like, that would have been $2,000 a month in profit that luckily I can do now, but now I don't have a good relationship with them because I didn't remember to build that, because they just got lost in the weeds. And that's $4,000 at least lost in opportunity.
Exactly.
So these systems that allow you to do more end up helping you scale much easier. It's just, you're handing off a lot of data, which is a nice thing. So what was your biggest hurdle going from January to where you're at now?
Biggest hurdle, I would say just finding profitable accounts, because I would find a lot of distributors and I would source their sales sheets, and it's just barely making any money, or Amazon's on most of the listings. So just being able to find certain items that worked for me, fit my criteria, and making sure that Amazon wasn't on the listing, because as you know, they'll drive down the price just to keep that buy box.
Oh yeah, heavily. So how did you overcome that?
What I found for me is bundling. So bundling, the ROI is much better because it takes a little bit more work. You might have to polybag items, label them. But Amazon isn't on a lot of bundle listings, and a lot of them have a great sales rank and doesn't have a lot of competition.
So are you creating bundles, or are you searching them out?
I'm searching them out. So
Okay.
I'll find certain items and then find various bundles on Amazon, and then, just make sure I buy the right quantity together.
Right.
And just bundle them and then send them to my prep center.
Yeah, it seems like sourcing from distributors direct just to sell the individual SKU is really difficult to make profitable. That's why we always want to go direct to the brand. But with bundling, like you said, the ROI is so much bigger. It's not as big of a hurt going and paying a little bit more to a distributor. It's easier of a process, obviously, to get those accounts. And so that's when it comes to being a little bit more strategic in how you're approaching the logistics of your business.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Which you're an operations guy, so that makes sense, right?
Yeah. And just having a working relationship with your distributors. There's one distributor in particular, I told him, these products are great, but I'm just not there yet with the discounts. I plan to spend X amount of dollars per month, and then they finally gave me an extra, 10 to 15% off, just because they didn't want to lose my business.
Yeah.
They didn't want me to go elsewhere.
But you did that after having purchased a few orders with them?
Yeah, after.
Yeah. So that's where a lot of sellers get stuck. They're like, well, Dylan, I called them. I asked for the basic discounts. They gave those to me. And then I told him I needed another 20% off. I'm like, okay, first off, you provided zero value thus far. And usually to get the account saying, hey, I'm looking for a supplier I can spend 10, 15, 20 grand a month with. I would love if that would be you, because I love the products you have. If not, that's not a big deal. That's great to get the account. But to get those extra discounts, spend some money, make a little less money initially, so you can then leverage those orders and say, hey, listen, we've already done business together. I'm easy to work with. I actually have the money to spend. I'd like to do more with you. Here's what I need to be able to give you more money each month. Here's what I need from you. If you can make that work, that's great. If not, that's okay too.
Hey, exactly. And I know there's a lot of brands, if you're gated, if you have a distributor invoice, it'll allow you to become ungated. So there's a lot of benefits to working directly with distributors.
Yeah, and there is, because you can get that commercial invoice to submit.
And I just opened up an account about a month ago with a local distributor. So I met in person with the account rep, and she was telling me, I mean, she was well versed in Amazon. So she was telling me, what sellers to look out for, and when she sent me the sales sheet, she like highlighted the items that she thought would be profitable for me. So, I mean, just having that working relationship, and then they'll tell you like what brands you can and cannot sell on Amazon. Because otherwise, if you list it, you buy a month's worth of inventory, and then then Amazon shuts you down. So it's good to just stay on top of everything.
And it's a good situation when you can actually find local, or at least local reps for a company. I've done that a few times where I've reached out and they're like, oh yeah, I forwarded your email to so-and-so. They're our Florida-based rep. They're actually in Jacksonville, next week, and would love to sit down at Starbucks and talk. I'm like, great. This is really cool. First time in person, right? It's getting out from behind your email inbox. Get on the phone, get in person. That's a big and easy differentiator between you and other Amazon sellers. But like you said, they will literally sit down and say, okay, what's your business model? I sell on Amazon. Great. From what I see, here's the 5 SKUs you really need to look at. And I can tell you the net profit minus Amazon's fees on these. So I know that they actually meet your buying criteria. It's such an easy thing to do. And you're hanging out in Starbucks and they're laying out the playbook for their brands. And like you said, they'll tell you this brand we can't really do that with, but these ones we can. And I've even had them call me and say, this brand has been selling to Amazon. They want to get away from that. Would you be willing to talk to, our brand ambassador for that specific one? Because we really like to start a pilot with you about shifting to third-party sellers. Now, again, you're in the power position and you're slightly getting an exclusive, or at least an opportunity to negotiate into an exclusive. And it opens up more doors. Having better relationships with either a brand or a distributor opens up a ton of doors. And I've had this happen countless times.
And that's my ultimate goal with one brand in particular, because we've had a working relationship probably since March. I mean, we email a few times a month. So we're always in communication. I'm helping her, she's helping me. And my ultimate goal is to be exclusive, but still working on that.
Yeah. And it takes time. It takes effort. And don't feel like you can't just call them and just say, hey, how's your day going? How's your week? I just want to see how everything's going. Like, don't even have an agenda, right? That's part of building a relationship, is not always expecting a transaction to happen. Just call them and say, hey, Linda, how's it going? That's it. Make it super open-ended and just have a conversation. Be like, cool, I was just thinking about you, have a good one, I'll place a restock order here shortly. Cool. All right, bye.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference.
It does, but people always think that you have to have a reason to call. But a reason could be, I'm just calling to see how you're doing. And you can have those relationships professionally with your reps, with the CEO of the company. You can absolutely do that. And the sellers that I see grow very quickly do exactly that. And it does stand out. So we're heavy into Q4 right now. Everybody's already planning for Q4 for next year, which is awesome. What's your plan for next year? What's the sales goal? What do you think you want to do? What do you think needs to change a little bit?
I mean, my ultimate goal is just hit the 7 figures. But I mean, the way I'm growing, I'm hoping that works out. But I have some smaller goals that I'm looking at as far as getting more accounts. So I have some contacts that told me about some upcoming trade shows next year. So I thought that'd be a great way to open up different accounts and just, get my name out there, my business name out there. That's probably one of my biggest goals. And I have some connections with some distributors. I actually met one through your Facebook group. So he works directly with a distributor that I work with. So he kind of gives me the ins and outs and stuff. And it's been very helpful. And I've been thinking about going full time. So, I mean, that's always on everyone's mind, but just taking that leap can be really scary.
It is.
Because
there's no getting around that.
like speaking with someone in the Facebook group, he recently got suspended for something so stupid, but he has suspension insurance, and he was telling me about it. So that just, opened up my eyes to something I'd never even thought about getting.
Yeah.
So just protecting yourself and your business in case, the dramatic suspension hits your account.
And again, it's mitigating risk, and it's understanding that that's a possibility, and doing this on the side is less risky than doing this full time, right? So if your account becomes suspended for let's say a month or two, yeah, it's not going to be the greatest thing in the world, but it's not going to hurt you as much if you're still working a job and can still pay your bills. But going full time, it's a different situation. And so you have to account for these things happening, right? That's the whole crux, if you will, of insurance is, okay, but if this happens, it would have been worth what I paid the whole time, especially if that's your main source of income.
Exactly.
And here's the thing, and it's super against the whole #entrepreneur thing right now, but you can love your job and want a side hustle that does 7 figures in sales and do both very well. And that's okay too. Everybody is kind of force fed from a fire hose this, well, jobs are terrible and whatever, but that's not always the case. Some people just love their jobs. They just want to make some more money, or just do it because it's fun and it's enjoyable.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So it's a thing. It's a step, should I say, that you really should think about. Because for some people, they do it and they're like, yeah, greatest decision I've ever made going full time. Some people are like, yeah, I kind of miss it sometimes. Yeah. It depends. I don't think there's that one answer that's like, yes, no, 100% generalized, you should do this, period. It's like, yeah, maybe not. But that's awesome.
But yeah, so 2018, my goal, I have a goal board in my office at my house. So every month I write, sales numbers I'm looking to hit and just small obtainable goals. So, those just compiled over the whole year just really add up. Some of my goals were, open up accounts with, X amount of brands,
yep.
Find X amount of distributors. And to become more legitimate, I finally bought liability insurance.
Okay.
In the terms of service with Amazon, it's required, but they don't enforce it. But I finally went through Ashlyn Haddon.
Yep.
$2 million coverage, and she provides legal assistance if you ever get into any trouble. So I just having that just makes me, rest easier.
Yeah. As you build your Amazon business up, it does become more of an asset, and you want to protect it. It's like having $1 million house and saying, yeah, I'm not going to get home insurance. But you live on the coast of Florida and we have hurricanes like twice a year. Maybe you should get home insurance.
I was going to say, I've watched a lot of YouTube videos from the Amazon seller's lawyer, and he said if, God forbid something happens to a buyer of the product, you could be somewhat liable.
Mm-hmm.
It could be far-fetched but I don't know, just having that, extra insurance just to protect you.
Let's say you sell toys and a kid somehow becomes allergic to the paint and licks the toy and goes into a coma. Theoretically, you could be held liable. And that's the big worry that
they cast a wide net.
Yeah. And it's obviously we're not legal advisors or whatever, but I don't know how that would actually play out, but it's something to consider. And does that happen? I don't know. I've yet to see a case where that has actually gone through, or somebody's been threatened or sued even. And it's one of those things, again, would you rather have the insurance and the safeguard knowing that, okay, if this was to happen, I'm at least okay? And sometimes just not knowing what would actually go through, because again, a lot of stuff with Amazon is still theoretical, because they just haven't progressed to the Supreme Court and it's never really been put through, but who's to say? So having that really protects you.
Yep, I agree.
So Brandon, for somebody who is getting started, they're in that first 1 month, 2 months, whatever, and they're trying to get to where you are. And the reason why I wanted to really bring you on is you've done it so recently that it's relatable. It's not, I'm doing 10 million a year in sales. I've been doing this for 15 years. Here's what I can teach you. And that's great. That has a ton of value. But somebody who's getting started, who's seeing those same hurdles and they're having troubles overcoming those, can see what you've done in the last year and relate and understand what you've done and hopefully replicate it for themselves. What advice would you give them if they're in that first little phase of getting accounts, making it happen, and getting to a point where it's starting to work?
I would say just do it. I mean, you're going to run into a lot of hurdles along the way, but just getting started is probably the hardest part. And then there's just a lot of value with, your Facebook group. There's a couple other ones that just reaching out to members that you see are doing well. Just say, hey, I have a question about this. Because, I know I've had people message me and I'm glad to help because we've all been there. We all had that. We all started, at the, couple $1,000s for the first year. So we know the struggles. And just for me, I watch a lot of YouTube videos just to learn and see some of the struggles that people went through and how they got over them. So just, fully involving yourself and just, being like a sponge, just sucking up all that knowledge.
And there's so much out there too. It's dumbfounding how much free stuff, how many free resources are out there specifically speaking to whatever problem you're dealing with. And to your point about asking questions, that's how me and my co-founder James met initially. He was, we both did Wholesale independently of each other and met on Instagram. I was like, hey, you're clearly doing more sales than I am. I'm at 6 figures. I'm at $250,000. How do I get to 7? And he's like, okay, let's jump on a Skype call. I was like, well, can I pay you for your time? He's like, no, dude, just jump on Skype with me for 30 minutes and let's figure this out. He's like, okay, here's 3 things you need to change right now. And I implemented those in the next week and everything started to shift up again. I'm like, okay, I just would not have thought about that if I didn't ask the question.
Oh, yeah.
And so if you see somebody doing well, just ask, hey, can we jump on Skype for 30 minutes? Or could I just send you an email with a few questions? I get questions all the time in email, Facebook, Instagram, and I love answering them because if I can save a new seller that 3 to 4 months of struggle that I had to go through of just trying to even figure out what to do, that's a huge win in the long run for a lot of people. If we can take, it's dumbfounding what you've been able to do in a year, really, like with Wholesale. That's amazing. But having the resources available to you enabled you to do that. And that's what's cool is you didn't just say, I don't know what to do, I'm stuck. You went and found the answers to it. And you asked those questions when you had them.
I don't want to take all the credit. My fiance, she's been great. She helps me bundle on the weekends. She picks up, packages on her doorstep before I get home from work. So she's been just having a support system as well is very beneficial.
It does, because as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, it can be extremely lonely at times. You're like, nobody gets what I'm doing or what I'm going through. You're like trying to talk to friends of like struggles and they're like, yeah, why is that an issue? I'm like, really? Why is that an issue? And sometimes it's not, but still having somebody who understands, who does support you. And I'm sure as a personal trainer, you understand this too, is if the spouse of a potential client is not on board and supportive, it's not going to work out.
Oh yeah.
And that applies to you as a business owner too. So make sure if you're married, if you have fiance, girlfriend, husband, boyfriend, whatever, get them on board. And they don't have to, be in the business and involved. Just have them support you. Just say, hey, this is what I want to do. I don't need you to do anything for it. It would be cool if you did, because helping me prep is going to save me a lot of time, but
and money.
Yeah. And money, but just, push me when I need it and keep me going. And that's a huge value.
I pay her with free flights with all the credit card rewards.
Yes. Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm going to do a whole episode on that. Yeah. I just booked a flight and it was $12. I was like, yes. I love it. Yeah, there's some added benefits of the wholesale model because you're spending so much money, and there's some advanced profit strategies that I wrote a blog post about. If you search Vendrive advanced profit strategies, you'll find it on Google. But there's some really, really fun stuff you can do as your business starts to grow. Cool. Well, Brandon, thank you again, man, for taking the time to answer some questions and help the audience out.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And before I forget, Instagram is a great tool as well. I know James has a really good Instagram page, but I mean, I think the guy that everyone looks up to is Watch Me Amazon.
Yeah, Larry Labarsky.
I've been following him for over a year, and I saw yesterday he was just interviewed by CNBC. So just how far he's come is just, if you want to get hyped up and just excited about Amazon and wholesale, I would definitely follow Larry. Yeah,
he is the godfather / king of wholesale, as I like to call him, because he's so real. He was struggling and he made the decision and he made it happen, and he doesn't hold anything back. He's like, okay, here's how I find suppliers. Here's how we prep. Here's a whole video of us taking in 14 pallets on a Tuesday morning and prepping them out. And and what's funny is when I started reaching out to people on Instagram, I reached out to Larry just asking a few questions, and he responded back with answers. And even better,
that's incredible.
He called me out on a few things. I'm like, hey man, I'm struggling with this. He's like, no, you're not. He's like, that's an excuse. And I was like, God, that's so true. Easy. But that's an easier thing to overcome when you realize, okay, that's not actually a problem. And yeah, reach out to, people who have done well with this business model want to share and help. They just do. People want to do that. And they're willing to.
There's no secret. They show you what they're doing, and anyone can do it. It's just a matter of putting in the work and
that's it.
Just grinding. Yeah,
that's it. Awesome, man. Well, Brandon, you're getting married soon. Good luck.
Thank you. And if anyone wants to message me, any questions, I'm here to help.
Yeah, jump in our Facebook group. Brandon's in there. He's very active, and we got a ton of resources. Love answering questions. Not just me, everybody. It's great. We have a built-up group now that jumps in there and can answer some questions pretty quick, so we can overcome a lot of hurdles within the matter of hours, if not, a few minutes. So that's good. Awesome, Brandon. Have a good one, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time.
Before we leave, I have a huge ask. If you enjoyed this podcast and you got value from it, leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. The way we're able to have more impact on more sellers is by getting in front of them. We can do that by having more reviews and getting pushed to the top of iTunes podcasts. So leave us a review and let us know what you think of the podcast.